Hello and welcome to RPA and AI Live 2018. My name's Ian Hawkins. I'm the editor of the PEX Network. A very warm welcome to you to this is our last session, wherever you're calling in from. Around the world, we have attendees from the world's biggest network of process excellence professionals, from organizations of every size, in every sector, and at every stage of the process excellence journey. This digital event is our way of bringing people together from across the globe to share knowledge and ideas with some of the leading lights of the industry. If you haven't used the On24 platform before, just a reminder, you can use the Q&A box that appears on your screen at any time. If you have a technical issue about the website, pop your question in there and our team will rush to your aid. If it's a question for the speaker, I'm going to be asking those at the end of the session. Make sure you have your flash player enabled and keep all of your volume buttons switched on and at a comfortable level. Well, that's my spiel over. I'm now delighted to be handing over to Richard Lipovski for a minute. Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ian. Hello, everyone. This is Richard Lipovski. I'm the Chief Sales Officer at Unmet, and I'm in very good company today. I'm here with Michal Rosiga, our Chief Product Officer. Today, you're going to hear about how to maximize your return on investment with process mining on your RPA project and on the RPA initiatives. First of all, I'll talk a little bit about what the RPA kind of landscape looks like right now. What are the key problems that we see and where we see the biggest value that we can actually help with, or the problems that we can solve or help you solve. And then finally, I'll be talking a little bit about how we are going about to help you with those individual problems with our solution. And then Michal will be showing you the demo of how you do it in the actual app, so that there is not only marketing and sales, sort of this high-level view, but really actual practical advice on how you would use process mining. So let's get it started. By the way, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them into the chat, and our team will try to answer them all. So first of all, where do we see RPA? From our point of view, it's a proven technology that has been around for a number of years already, but the biggest growth has been in the 3 to 5 years, like the last ones. It's secure, it's stable, and it's scalable, so there are no issues with the technology. We know that it works. It's corporate ready. So what that means is that companies, like there are already thousands, if not the lower tens of thousands of deployments in and around the world. So the adoption cycle, I would say, is somewhere early mass or maybe already the late mass, where companies are adopting the technology really fast, and it has been quite a hype. What we've seen also in terms of process mining now happening, and we see that all companies do have these centers of excellence and the developers and the teams already in place. And in terms of the business case, it's also quite clear. So significant time savings, reducing tedious work that annoys people and that makes their life a little bit better, therefore also improving their results. And then finally, of course, error reduction, because the robots don't do the various errors that people usually do. So when we see RPA like this, what's the problem, or where do we see the main problems that we can identify and we can help with? First of all, it's the unfulfilled business expectations. And even though I was talking about this business case before and that it's clear, there are still some expectations that could be, let's say, met in an even better way. Part of it has to do with the second problem, and this is the return on investment guesstimation. That's actually looking at how do you count, or how do you find out what the return on investment might be for the particular RPA or even any other automation initiative. And then, of course, there are no more usual suspects, or I'll be talking about that in a little detail, but that basically those use cases that we see are already being processed or have been already automated. Then growing while keeping it all together is another big topic that we see. And then finally, that there is a lack of the human and robot synchronization within companies and seeing how they all interact together. And this is all where process mining can come in. to help. So first of all, to kick it off, the unfulfilled expectations. I would say that even though the return on investment is quite high, I think that there were a few kind of misconceptions where most people or companies thought that it would be sort of like the silver bullet for processes and that you can automate them. There was even thinking about end-to-end automation, and of course the FTEs. Everybody thought that we'll implement some robots and finally we'll be able to either let some people go or promote them to other positions so that we can use them somewhere else. In the end, what happened is that since we're not really automating the whole role, we're only automating a part of that role or a specific tasks of people. It's not really entirely where kind of we thought that it would be. Then this is the most important part, I would say, is the return on investment, where we see it's more an art rather than a science, especially currently, because I would say the most accurate ones are the ones where people are most experienced, but even the experience cannot really be translated to each and every process, because every process, such as also every company or every organization, is different. There are different inputs, different variables. Even though they're using the same systems, it might be the same industry, it might be even the same kind of product, it will be different in terms of how they execute it. So we feel that currently, even if we look at, for example, our colleagues from other process mining vendor companies are promoting these automation rates, which we see as something that if you don't have data for it, that this is a human or this is a robotic task or server task or a digitalized task, then the automation rates are not really giving you too much information about actual reality, and usually it's, again, only guesstimation, which we hope to kind of do better, and we'll show you in a few seconds how. This was one of the other things that came to our mind, and that RPA was kind of seen as a hammer, and initially people were like, what should we or what can we automate in general? And something that we get to hear from partners a lot and from customers is that they've been automating either the wrong processes, or when they chose the process well, then they chose the way how to automate that process not in the right way or not in the best way possible. And at the end, also something that we see quite often is that instead of optimizing or improving that process before you start that automation journey or automation leap, you basically start with automation and then figure out, after you have spent significant resources on developing, on the assessment, that the process wasn't exactly the best. And oftentimes, one thing that I don't have there but is also significant is that many times the process shouldn't be automated at all. This is just a very short case in terms of how you can go wrong with choosing a process to be automated, and how the return on investment has been kind of led astray. And that's basically that there was a order processing case where the partner estimated that there is about 60% of automation potential in that order processing stage, and that the average duration was 5 minutes of the activity altogether. And they saw it as a very quick win with a high return on investment. They said, okay, let's go. We know what we have to do. So the problem was that once it came into production, they found out that the assumption was actually wrong. So this 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, showed that even though they were able to automate 60 to 80% of all those orders, the problem was that 80% of those orders were actually those that didn't take almost any time, even for the human, to kind of finish or process, and that the 20% that were not able, or they were not able to automate, were actually those that took most of the time. So the return on investment in average was much lower than expected. And this is something that if you had process transparency with process mining, you would be able to very easily look into and find out what is the right metric to choose. The other problem that we saw is that even though many companies are still within or inside of the RPA implementation process, a lot of these usual business cases, the back offices, where it's quite obvious what you can automate and what you cannot automate, like those are kind of running out, or there are not so many out there, and partners and customers are coming to us and asking, how do I find something in addition? Where do I go next? Like, how do I grow this? Because that was the initial expectation. Right now we bought, let's say, 20 licenses or 50 licenses. How do we grow it to the 100 that we had in our plan? And that's something that we get to hear from customers a lot. And then one of the other issues is that the budgets, or I would say the return on investment, oftentimes didn't take into account the maintenance part of the equation. So even though we have the teams in place already at those companies, what we get to hear is that a lot of the time people spend significant parts of their effort or of their day with maintaining the already running robots and orchestrating them and figuring out how to kind of make them better utilized. But the problem is that at the same time, of course, while you're spending this time, there is an expectation of growth and of implementing more and more processes. And then finally, the problem that we also see a lot is that even though there is this interaction between the robots and the humans to some degree, like before automation was started, or before RPA came in, usually there was a clear metric, there was a clear ability to, especially with the human resources, an ability to basically see and measure the performance. But slowly, from step by step, from smaller implementations to larger ones, these kind of the service delivery has been cut up into different pieces, and it has been more difficult to look into the overall performance of those human resources together with the robots. And that's because there is no, or was no, good way how to have an overview of the entire process. And also, one of the things that we get to hear a lot, and especially from the partners, because of the fact that they would like to show what the before and after is that, okay, we promised some return of an investment either to the internal customers or to our customer in general, and how do we measure it? How do we actually say that that's what we have achieved, that this is the success, this is the improvement that has happened, and how does it actually compare to the past? So what we do in terms of process mining is, I would say, full process transparency. We're giving you the true picture of the organization based on the data from the systems that users are using day to day. Therefore, you can understand the process dynamics much better. And that means that you don't only see what the process looks like, you don't only know what the people are doing, but you can also understand the dynamics of the process. That means, how does one process step affect the entire process? How do the resources allocated in those steps affect the process? What are the different variants of that process, and how do they compare to each other? What could be removed, what could be automated? So those are the things that you can find out pretty easily in Mineit. And you can, of course, based on that, make better decisions that are not only guesstimates, but are backed by data. Now we have a short poll. So what do you consider the biggest advantage of process mining in RPA? All right, so that was pretty even. Yesterday, I saw one of the, I think it was our friends from Salonis, they had a poll on ROE. ROE was the return on investment was the number one problem that people see, and that's what we think as well. Like that's something that you can really tackle with using a solution like ours. So our approach is not to leap right in and not to go automating something that you don't understand, but really take that one step back in order to take two steps forward. So basically, stop, look at what your process looks like, figure out, is it in good shape for RPA? Is there a lot of variation? What are the inputs? How long does it take? Are there any resources that shouldn't be there? Or like, is it a manual process? If you have the data, then identify what the biggest potential is for that RPA. And then, of course, you can even go further, and we'll show you in a few minutes. We'll show you how you can look at what the best variants are to automate. Even though I have to say that in RPA, I would say the biggest advantage is that you don't actually have to automate it according to a user, because the robots work differently. They do not work like humans. They move through the different applications in different ways, and therefore this can be creatively, I would say, exploited. And therefore, it's really good that you are able to know what the best variant is, what the best run through the process is, but at the same time, this gives you opportunity to reshuffle it and look at the process from the perspective of how the robot works. In terms of what the different levels are that we are using in terms of looking at RPA and process analysis, we would say it's two different levels. The first is the helicopter view, which is looking at the process or at the organization and how it works. And the second is in-depth process with the activity views of a certain user or groups of users. The first is the process level. That is the level where you see the overall process flow and where you can understand and see the impact of individual steps and where you can identify those resources and how do they tie together. This high level, what we call the helicopter view, is basically the data or based on the data from the system logs, whether that's SAP, whether it's Salesforce, ServiceNow, or whatever other core system or custom-built proprietary system. So these would be the logs that are being logged every time an activity is happening with a specific activity. Then the in-depth level is basically the individual activities performed on executing that step. So the high level would, for example, be processing an invoice. So in the first part, you would only see processed invoice as the step. But if you go deeper and you look at the activity level, you can actually record what the individual user is doing on that interface. And you cannot only record or capture the data, what is happening on a single user, but you can go further and you can basically record whole teams. And again, you can go with the approach of recording a single process or process variants for that process, or you can go ahead and record all the activities that the teams are doing during a certain period, and basically then pre-process the data, look at, all right, so what are the parts that make sense for us to kind of analyze further and identify whether there are any more opportunities. Then we, of course, can monitor robots. And in terms of monitoring robots, you can either do it in the process map and see how the robots are performing. So for example, even though most of the tasks take only not even seconds for the robots, there are tasks that are, for example, connected with OCR that take possibly even longer than a human would do. But those are all things that you can see. One of the things that we are introducing as well very shortly is dashboards. So you can also monitor all the robots in your organization and see what their performance is, not only from a visual side, but also from the side of analytics and how they are performing. And then, of course, after you automated process, you can see it as a whole. You can see what the high level is, and you can combine it with the lower level of the individual steps within that process. So that helps you in multiple ways. It helps you, of course, seeing what the impact is, then seeing whether there is better utilization and whether, for example, something happened to the process, whether you're not creating bottlenecks after, for example, the robots, whether you have the right resource allocation after it. So, because of course, before robotization happened, the activities might have happened a bit slower. So you can see clearly what the impact is. And then not only that, but you can also monitor if there are any changes to the process that you should be aware of, not only on the robot side, but also on the human resource side. One of the things, and this is also something I've been talking about before, but it's basically the before and after. And there, Michal will show you very soon how you can also compare what the process looked like before and what it looked like after. And not only visually, but you can identify where the changes happened and how the dynamics basically changed after the robotization has been complete. So right now, I will give words to Michal, our Chief Product Officer, and he will be telling you and showing you how we basically do this in Minit. All right, Michal.
Thank you, Richard. So let me switch the screen.
You need to press play, right?
Okay, so I hope everybody can see the screen. So again, thank you, Richard. So what I would like to show you is what Richard was talking about directly in Minit as a process mining tool, and show you the insight into the synergy where we see it between process mining and RPA. So we are currently in the project hub. I have already prepared some stuff beforehand, and I have imported an invoice approval process. That's a standard business process. We have it right here. We can look at it. It's basically an automated process in terms of business process management, and there are several human tasks that are being performed. So we currently imported an event log from the systems. And we are seeing a process map with the frequencies, how often the particular activities in the process are being executed. We can see the details here on the right side, which human resources are performing a certain activity, and analyze the process in the as-is state. So we are currently seeing a process before applying any RPA, and we are using this analysis, not only the static analysis, but we can use the dynamic analysis using process animation. We can have a look at the statistics. I will show that in a second, to analyze the process and to try to find really the suitable places for robotic process automation. So which of the tasks should be automated? And one of the easiest ways is when you have the information about the start and end of the particular events that happened in the systems, you can easily switch to a performance view and showing the mean duration, look at those activities from the viewpoint of time spent there. And we can see there are certain with the halo effect, focused activities and paths that are focusing our attention on the potential bottlenecks in the process. We can, of course, find out manually or by talking with the process owners which of these activities are particularly suitable for RPA, but we can also use this data to use like a semi-automatic way to find it. And Richard was talking about recording of the behavior of people or how the users are using the applications. And so first of all, we can use the analysis to find out those spots that are potential bottlenecks in the process. And we, for example, start from the top where we see some automatic activities being here performed. Here's a activity called check order numbers. These activities take only a certain part of a second or 1 second. Here when we check the order numbers, so if on the invoice we have an order number, this order number is either automatically recognized by some OCR engine from the invoice, and in that case we go this way in the process. So we take the straight path to the comparison of sums on the invoice and order. But if the order number is not found on the invoice, we are going to the activity called manual entering of the order number, and there is a set of people or a group of people doing certain tasks where they need to find the order in a system based on some other attributes which were recognized from the invoice, and then copy the order number from a certain form into another form, into the form of the invoice, and save it. So we immediately see that this activity is taking 6 hours on average. If we switch back to the frequency, we can also see that nearly 50% of the invoices are going this way. So we might think that, and even from the financial point of view, we have the financial information. We can see that nearly 50% of the amount of invoices is taking this path in the process. So this is a really important step, and we can think of using the robotic process automation for this particular activity and shortening the time needed to do the manual entering of the order number, and thus also shortening the duration of the process. So we can also look at the statistics of the process so that we have an overview, and we can see that the mean case duration here in the middle is 2 days, 8 hours, 32 minutes. And so that's an average duration of the invoice approval for the time frame of the event log that we took from the system. And this is an important number because we will use it in the future analysis, and we will show you also some of the problems that might occur with applying robotic process automation without any insight using tools like Minit to analyze and monitor the process and the before and after state. Okay, so Richard already mentioned recording of the events. So for the manual entering of the order number, what we can do, we can either record people who are doing this particular task, record either the whole day of their work, and record all the people involved in this step, and then combine this and analyze it in the same way from the event logs from the recorder as we analyzed this invoice approval process. Or we can just focus on the particular parts of the day when they are doing or executing this particular task. We also, what we did here in the second view, we used the sub-process filter to cut out this part of the process, just to have an idea of just not to be biased by the rest of the process. We want only to know what happens between the check order numbers and the compare of sums, and we see that right here. So Richard also mentioned this assumption that, and the wrong assumption, that when we automate this particular task, we save a certain amount of time and we have certain return on investment. And in this case, it might seem that we will save approximately 6 hours from the process. And this is also an important number that we will use in the future. So we have this prepared, and we will use this to compare with the new process. Now, when we go one step further, we use the recorder to record the activity of the users. And the process map that comes from these event logs might seem like this. So it's a little bit more complicated, although still readable. But so we are seeing a lot of activities going on there. People are, dealing with their emails, searching in their web browsers, and between those activities, they are working with certain applications which are connected with that particular business process. So what we can do with this map to make it more readable is we can use the auto slider settings just to simplify the map and come to the really most frequent activities that we see here. And we can switch the view also to a metric called maximum repetition count, so that we can see which activities are repeated a lot of times in the time frame when we recorded those people. And we can use also the map clustering function according to the application that is already here to see the clusters of certain systems that were used. And we can see that these people have been doing something in Outlook, and they were using Explorer and so on to change applications. But we see a certain pattern here in the SAP logon. So they were doing certain things in SAP system. And they initiated a form, and we can see they clicked into a field here. They typed something, and then pressed tab and typed something again, and so on and so forth, and search for the order, and then click accept button, and continued in other systems. But this particular pattern was really repeated a lot of times. So also, we can check this with the process owner and with the people involved, if this is the part that corresponds to the manual entering of the order number. Now, we can also use the filter here, and we can just filter based on the activity or the application. Application, and just focus on that SAP logon part of the process, so we can see only that particular cluster. So we can see only that pattern. And when we look at the different variation, because the process mining tools also calculate variations of the process, we can see that the users that were involved in this recording use two variations of the process. And when we click on the first one, we can see this is not a pretty straightforward variation of the process. So in that particular form, the user was jumping around and using some activities to move back in the process and then go forward. However, if we highlight the second variant, we can see this is pretty straightforward, right? So this seems like a better variant for a robot, and we could probably build the robot according to this user or the work of this user. To check this in more details, we can switch to the variant overview, where we see the details of the variants. And when we look at the variant number 1 and the set of steps, we can also look at the overall statistics, and we see that the mean duration of this particular variant was 5 minutes 22 seconds. However, the variant 2 took only 1 minute 33 seconds. So it seems really that this straightforward variant is delivering the same result as variant number 1, but it's more straightforward, and therefore it's faster. So again, we can use a second filter, and there is a variety of filters which you can use to drill down into the process analysis, just to filter that variant, apply it, and when we switch to the process map, we get this pretty straightforward process variant, and basically we have defined a baseline for the robot. So this is something that you can use in your RPA project to build the robot according to, right? Now is the time when the RPA implementation takes place. So either we create the robot with using a recorder, right? In some of the cases, for some RPA vendors, we use an RPA development team to create the robots. So no matter what is the mean, the importance is the result. We have the robots running instead of having the manual enter order number activity. And when we go back to the project hub, we can see that I already imported the after state. So we are right now in the phase where we are kind of monitoring the robots. The robots are running and doing their job. And we want to have a look at the process after the robots have been implemented and they are in operation. So we imported the process. And if we look at the overall process, we can see it's very similar to what we've seen before, right? The only difference is we do not have the manual enter order number here, but in case the check order numbers is, or this activity, this automatic activity does not find that the order number was present in the invoice and was not recognized with the OCR engine, then the robot is run. Again, it's straightforward because it was built according to this variant. Does some job, clicks accept, and then we continue in the process the same way we did before, right? So it goes for some approval, then it might take several levels of approvals, and it might go into solving a rejected invoice, or it might be approved and then go to account confirmation and invoice accounting, and then the process ends, right? So we see everything is working fine. Now, again, we can use the sub-process filter to filter the same part of the process as we've seen before, or we can just monitor the robots, right? So this is the part where the robot is being executed. There's nothing special here. If we look at the performance of robots, we can see they are really fast. So it's 1 second, 4 seconds. So basically, the whole thing, the whole part of that process is done in few seconds. When we go to that part of the process, which is over here, so from the check order numbers to that part of the process where they click accept and compare of sums. Now, what we would expect is, okay, this is taking 4 seconds. Now, we have seen that the manual enter order number takes 6 hours, so we are going to save 6 hours, right? Let's look at the statistics. And we can see that really the mean case duration for this is 6 seconds. So in 6 seconds, this part of the process is being executed, right? Now, let's get back a little bit and look at the overall process. And as we can see, we would expect that if we save this amount of time in this robot, we will also save this amount of time in the overall execution of the robots. Now, the problem is that when we look at the statistics, and you might remember the number from the beginning of the demonstration, right now the mean case duration is 2 days, 8 hours, 32 minutes. And it was around 34 minutes if I'm not mistaken. So we did not save basically anything, right? So the overall duration of the process is the same. Now the question is, what happened? Well, something is wrong. And if you only monitor the robots, you are absolutely fine, because you found out that you saved an amount of time, and your robots are working absolutely in a perfect condition, right? And when we look at this performance diagram here right now, what happened is that half or 50% of those processes took the path directly to compare of sums. So the automated process sent them directly to the next steps. And these steps took only a few seconds, and it went directly to approving on specific level. Beforehand, 50% of those processes spent 6 hours on average in a certain manual task where people were searching for order numbers. And therefore, the queue for the approval was smaller, right? Right now, the manual entering or the entering of the order number takes only 6 seconds. And that means that all the invoices in general are just flowing or flying, better said, flying directly to the approving on specific level. And now we can see that approving on specific level is taking 1.34 days. So what was it before? And for this purpose, we have a process compare functionality. And what we can do here, we have the process with the bots running here. And we add another layer from the process before, and we take the whole process, and we add it on top of that. And if you look at the process, the coloring scheme is that the orange events are basically the same. They are in both processes. They are present in both processes, and we can see that even the duration is the same. Now, the green ones happened in the before state, right? So this is the manual enter order number, which took 6 hours. We can see the negative number here. This means that we saved 6 hours on average. We can see the blue ones, the bots running here, which happened only in the after state, which are, took 6 seconds. But suddenly, although the other activities are the same, we suddenly find out that approving on specific level, the mean duration of this activity increased by 2 hours. So if we look at the details and look at the duration, beforehand, in the before state, the mean duration was 1 day, 5 hours. However, right now, it's 1 day, 8 hours, and some minutes, of course. So what happened is that the bot created a load of work for the approvers, and the time needed for the approval of invoice was just prolonged by 2 days. And this is something that only a look at the hybrid process, at the process where you see the bots, including the tasks before and after done by the human workforce, can be observed and can be monitored. And now, of course, the question is, what can we do with that? And there are many points how you can proceed. You can either hire the number of approvers, or take some work they are doing instead of approving invoices and allocate it to some other people, and so on and so forth. So of course this is out of the boundaries of this analysis or this demonstration, but you can of course find all the different ways how to deal with it. But the point here is that data-driven analysis of the before state and data-driven monitoring of the overall picture of the after state and comparing it with the before state is just necessary to have a happy RPA project. Okay, so that's the demonstration. And now back to Richard.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Michal. It was very enlightening. All right, I will just summarize it briefly, and then we'll go into the Q&A. I think that we have quite a few questions, so we'll take some time to answer it. So I will only take a few more minutes. So basically, why I just wanted to summarize it. What are the main things that you can achieve with process mining and with MineIt when you are talking about an RPA project or a general automation project? Right now, we see process mining as being the basis for any kind of process improvement. So it doesn't have to be RPA. But with regards to RPA, you can really look at whether you have to automate or whether you can automate, or you should optimize, standardize before the process happens or before the process starts. ideally you would like to do both, and that's also something that you can. So you can basically start automating whatever it is that makes sense right away, and while you're doing that, look at what processes could you standardize so that within a few months, half a year or so, you can also start the automation on a different process. Also, as you saw, with Minded, you could do much better ROI cases, because you can really look at those different metrics and see whether it makes sense, and not only whether it makes sense for the specific part of activity, but also, as Michal showed, whether the dynamics of the process will be impacted by putting a robot in there. Of course, you can identify new RPA candidates this way, but not only that, but you can also evaluate the changes or the impact after this implementation has happened, and you can also monitor the changes. So when there is a change in the process, you can also see, okay, there is another variant that is not in line with whatever we set up, and we should probably look at it before we are going to take the next step. So that's why I would encourage everyone who is interested in this technology to really talk to us and find out a bit more. I would like to make a shout out to our partners. Basically, we partner up with UiPath and Blue Prism. That's the two technologies that we have worked with so far, but we are also open to other RPA tools that we see are either emerging or are out there. We are actually technology agnostic, so it doesn't really matter whether you use one of those or you use others. I think that was one of the questions that was asked by somebody. I would also like to thank the guys from DXC Technology who are also spearheading this RPA and process mining journey, and also our other partners all around the world, the official ones as well as the many others that we are working with, I would say, less formally. And finally, I would say that RPA was kind of this first disruptive experience with virtual robots. And we see that has been really disruptive. And for the past 2 years, there has been this huge trend of actually taking a technology to such heights in a very short time. And we believe that process mining will be a very similar entry into the data-driven organization, but a truly data-driven organization, actually using all the data that we have for making better decisions and improving the bottom line of the organization. So I would encourage everyone to go to minded.io, get a free trial, get a demo from us. We are usually working with customers and partners on POCs, so that either it's an internal or external POC, and you can really evaluate whether it makes sense for you and your organization. And of course, everybody who signs up until the end of next month who will get a discount from us because of this event. So thank you very much. This was Richard Lipowski and Michal Rosik, and now we are getting back to the Q&A. So
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Richard. I'm going to start because you just showed that slide with all of the partners on it, and immediately the question jumped out at me from Joel Krishnan, who says, does the monitoring involve a consolidated view of different products like WorkFusion, UiPath, and Blue Prism? If your enterprise runs all three products, will you be able to see a consolidated view of those?
Yes, I think that from that particular perspective, we would. It's all about the availability of data. So, for example, UiPath and Blue Prism both are logging everything that the robot does. So as long as there is data from the robot, we do not really look at whether it's a different technology or not. What we need to do, though, is to make sure that the data or the structure of the data is the same, so that you are not comparing apples to pears, right?
Okay. Great. I've got I'll run through the questions we have here because we're slightly short of time. But what I will do is once I've got I'll do as many as we can, and then I will bundle up all of the questions that you haven't been able to answer, and I'll make sure those go to you. So if you don't hear your question read out, don't panic. An answer will hopefully be forthcoming because I will send them all over, send them over to Richard and Mikhail. So here's one from Marianne. Is it possible to simulate changes of RPA before implementation to be able to identify where the value is added and not just pushing the bottleneck? Is that a possibility?
Yes, that is a very good question, and we think that yes, it's possible, and of course it's a different topic. Simulation and process mining is a different topic, and I would leave the answer with yes. We think that it's possible, and you will see in probably a very near future how this is possible in mining.
Okay, grand. I expect that will be one of the questions that we bundle up and send over. So if anything changes, I'm sure you're welcome to go back to Marianne and give her an update. She has a further question, which is how do you record the entry of the manual data, which is not recognized by an OCR to automate it?
Yes, well, the recorders that we use are of course. Tracking what you type on the keyboard, but in this case, we have been able to find out that the whole process was that the order number was not on the invoice, but it was in the system, of course, because the invoice was or should be connected with the order. So there were other items which were legally necessary to be on the invoice. And the users basically used this information to find the order number for that invoice in the system. And therefore, we could use the recognized data that was available on the invoice to automatically search for the right order number in that system, and just copy the number and basically link it to the invoice.
Okay. Joel Krishnan wants to know, is the monitoring of RPA real-time, or are the events recorded and then imported to Minet?
Yes. So we need to say it's not online. So you are not, directly connected to the production system or the orchestrator that is orchestrating the bots. On the other hand, we have a scheduled data refresh functionality, which is refreshing your analysis. And you can do that on a manual basis. So when you open the application to look at the processes and look at the current state, you can just refresh the analysis with new data, or you can schedule this to be done or to do it in regular intervals. Of course, in a process like this where of course, the bots are running very fast, but the processes are taking days to run, and there is a certain number of instances running per day or per month. I mean, it's not really feasible and good to refresh the process or the analysis every hour. I mean, you will not get too much information out of it. So. So you can just set the scheduled data refresh to refresh during the night or twice a week, and you get the newest state of the analysis.
Great. While we're on the subject of data, Joshua Painter wants to know, can you explain how the data is initially captured and what the prerequisites are for the data to use this tool? How is a human's downtime waiting for other tasks factored into the tool? So where's all this information coming from, and what does it need to look like?
Okay, now I'm not sure if he means the data from about the process in general, or just the data about the recording, about what the people are doing. So I will stick to the second part. I think it's connected to the recording. If not, just let me know, and I will answer that later on. So the recorder is basically recording everything that is being done on your computer, right, or on the user's computer. Really, all the actions, like clicking, typing, switching the applications, opening the windows, forms, and so on. And we are working with the RPA vendors and partners to have the data already in a form which is suitable for process mining. So we have a very close cooperation and discussion how the data should look like. So I would say it's kind of ready when it comes from the recorder, but or it will be ready when the recorders are ready for that. And right now it might need some pre-processing, which is not very complicated, but you get the data in the correct form. So you have all the necessary information in the data that comes from the recording.
Okay, this is a really interesting one from Praveen, who says, in the process map, veracity is really key. How do we weed out activities which are not related to the process? So, for instance, if a user is waiting for a process to happen, they might be on Facebook, they might be on Google, they might be reading headlines. How do you work out what's related to the process and what is just sort of human downtime?
Yeah. Well, of course, the analysis of these logs from recording of the user activity is not fully automatic. We are currently also in cooperation with UiPath, actually working on the automatic recognition of certain patterns based on the data available from the recording. Where you can automatically find out what are the patterns that are repeated many times. But of course, also on Facebook, you can find repeatable patterns. And from the data, we as Facebook is not the only particular platform where this can occur, and there is a multiple of out of work, I would say, or non-working time spent. You basically need some human analysis to be done with the data before you connect them with the data from the other information systems where the human workforce is working. So the map that I was showing, the after state, is basically a compilation of several event logs. So not only from the bots, but also from the other systems.
Okay, this might be our last question, but it's quite a good one. Milind Patel would like to know, is data standardization a must, or is it merely a nice to have before you start your RPA journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's like, I'll start with a few years ago when we started talking with our customers and partners. There was the problem that most of them was saying that there is no data. We cannot get the data for even for the analysis. So the problem was the data. And nowadays the situation is different. So the data is available, but you are right that I would call it data quality is important. So data standardization, of course, you have many different ETL platforms, many different ways how to standardize data. But what we currently see is that the processes are really coming from, or the process traces are coming from heterogeneous data sources. And sometimes some parts of the process even might be either manual or they are not locked at all. And this is what causes problems, of course, because process mining is based on the event log data. And if that data is not present, then we have a problem. So I think it's a must. But there are, and I will not go into much detail, but there are ways how to overcome some of the problems with data quality or missing data in terms of forthcoming with the analysis and the RPA projects.
Okay, Mikhail, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you so much to you, and thank you very much to Richard for your time here. Thank you very much to everybody listening in wherever you are, whether it's first thing in the morning or last thing at night, or whether it's lunchtime like it is here in London. It's been great having you here. It's been a wonderful series of sessions. I feel like I've learned an awful lot, and if there's anything you've missed, don't forget you can watch back and you can pass on the links to the on-demand content to anybody that might be interested. It's all going to be up there on PEX Network. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, you can. I'm at PEX Network on Twitter. And if you want to find me on LinkedIn, I'd be delighted if you came and clicked on my face and said that you wanted to be connected up. I will always say yes if you're from the PEX Network. It just remains for me to say thank you very much indeed to my guests. Thank you to everyone who's been kind enough to give us their time. And thank you very much to you for coming along and participating with your questions and your feedback. Have a great rest of the day, whatever you're doing.